Hello, everybody. I hope you're either had a coffee or you're getting a coffee and then coming back to hear my talk. Because during my studies as a psychology bachelor student, I did an experiment on attention and circadian rhythm, and it turned out that exactly during this time, the attention span, the cognitive performance is about 40% less than at the peak hours. So I hope that I will be stimulating enough for you. And I can promise you that I will not try to convince anybody not to use SPSS. That's totally not what my talk is about. It's actually more about simulation and agent-based modeling. And yeah, that gets me to what am I doing here. Well, first of all, the talk is going to be roughly divided in 3 parts. The first will be a small introduction to psychology and kind of different approaches. And I will be talking about a more specific one that is not so common. And it is that of computerized thought experiments. And for that, Python is a great tool, a tool to make the abstract tangible. And in the end, I will give an example of, this agent-based simulation that I programmed myself from scratch and show that. Just to give, a frame of reference, cognition, in the way that I will be using the term, it's used in many different ways that are too ambivalent, in my opinion, and that's why I try to redefine it and make this definition tangible with the simulation. Is the way that I the interpretation that I prefer is by Maturana and Varela, and they describe cognition as a holistic aspect of a self-reproducing living system, which can be a human being, for example, but also just a bacteria, anything, which can be defined by a living system cyclical property of self-maintenance, and therefore survival through the processing of information. And the processing of information to further one's own survival, that seems to me should be something that all of you know about as people working with data. It's also making your money with it. So, to put it in a really simple way, this definition says, basically, life is a loop feeding itself, literally. So, but the key of the presentation is not so much this model of cognition, but actually the bridging of the gap between 2 disciplines and kind of my inspiration that I got as a psychology student to learn programming and to use that to come up with something unique. And then I actually ended up applying for a master's program in computer science, and they accepted me because the formal requirement was a natural science degree, and I have a Bachelor of Science, and I had to study incredibly much and recover a lot of courses, but now I'm finally through with all of that. I have 3 semesters to go, but now I'm a proper master's student. And, adding the computational element to my work, despite at the time having a completely non-computational background. My name is Titus von Köller. I told you the other things already that are on the slide. Currently, I live in Lugano, Switzerland, and you can see this beautiful panorama. Lugano, it's pretty tiny. I mean, it's the capital of Italian-speaking Switzerland, Ticino, but it has some pretty cool things there. I mean, it has Europe's fastest supercomputer, which is actually the 6th fastest in the world. Has this really nice university, which is not well known, but the informatics department is really young. Actually, it's only 10 years old, but it was founded by people from ETH Zurich, and especially the master's program is especially it's really great. And there's only 4 to like 25 students in any of the classes, and I don't know any other university that offers such a great ratio from student to professor, and the professors are incredible like researchers, and they're quite some special people there. Like one slide about personal things. I love skiing, backcountry skiing, which you see in the middle and the top slide, and it has been so since I'm very young. And I have a tiny, cute dog, but that's just random stuff. Maybe that gets you less tired if the coffee is not working yet. So, psychology. Many people, have kind of weird things. Like they ask me, so you study psychology, or well, that's in the past now. But so isn't psychologist like somebody like a plumber for the soul? And then they kind of mix up all these terms like psychologist, psychotherapist, psychiatrist, and psycho. Really, I mean, psychology is science, and people that study psychology don't end up as psychotherapists. That's maybe 20%. And psychiatrists are people that have a medical education and not this psychology as a science. Well, I studied psychology, and it is like according to Wikipedia, which many professors don't like, but I like it. It's kind of a looking glass on kind of the greatest common denominator. Psychology is the study of behavior and mind, embracing all aspects of human experience. It is an academic discipline and an applied science which seeks to understand individuals and groups by establishing general principles and researching specific cases. Why do more psychologists need to learn Python? The obvious answer, which this talk will not be about, is Python has become the go-to statistical tool, how you might know. I mean, came to a conference about it. And all other options mostly suck. Maybe R doesn't suck so much. But I mean, mainly people in psychology, they use stuff like SPSS, and it's like total crap. And the not so obvious answer is programming languages. Just give me a second to have some water. Programming languages are the perfect tool to describe processes. And the mind is a process. The intermingling inside the mind, or the intermingling between minds, that can all be described as distributed processes. And this is what I want to lead up to, that simulation and modeling and programming is a really good way of making these processes tangible. And historically, classically, psychology, also the methods in psychology tend to be divided like at a fundamental level into quantitative and qualitative methods. And quantitative, I mean, we just heard about, for example, in the last talk, it's pretty similar in psychology. Evaluate hypotheses. Usually in an experiment, try to set up the experiment so that it's, like not really ambivalent and that you don't have a lot of noise. Just to give an example, there was a really nice experiment done at Yale, and it showed basically that something as simple as, whether a person is handed a hot or a cold cup in an elevator going up to a room in which the person will then be interviewing another person, statistically shows statistically relevant differences in the way that we evaluate character in other people. I mean, and that's a pretty incredible result, in my opinion. And that's like a typical example of how you would conduct a quantitative psychological study. Try to have as little kind of diverging, aspects of the experiments as possible, and have one key thing that's different. In this case, in the elevator ride, the guy was just, pretending to tie his shoes and gave the cup to the person that was being experimented on. The problem with that, approach in general, is that it tends to only, you can only make things clear that are pretty reductionistic in nature, and great complexity is difficult to approach with that. So, and then you have the qualitative, which tries to deal with the unquantifiable. It employs methods like observation, hidden or participatory, like open participatory. And the research tends to be more descriptive in nature. And they try to kind of come up with models, but it's really kind of not the approach that is common in the natural sciences. A good example is The Gang. It's a book by Thrasher. I mean, it's quite a while ago, 1927. And it is a careful analysis of Chicago gangs. Basically, he looks very closely how about urban design and like geography affects gangs, and also gang economies, for example. And the thing is that this kind of research is extremely work-intensive, and there's a lot of procedure to it, and still it's can be discussed how valid it is, and it needs a lot of foundation in theory, and this theory is really like there's many different schools that don't agree with each other, and well, that's it. That's not what my talk is about. I want to talk about thought experiments in Python. And programming is great because for this purpose, because it is very good at narrowly, sorry, I got mixed up. So basically, programming is already great at narrowly defined and highly specifiable tasks like system management and all the kind of stuff that you can automate, and that's very kind of clearly laid out. But less obviously so, at least, I mean, I don't think it is an approach that is that common. It's also a great exploratory and descriptive tool. I mean, you all kind of deal with that, but in the general computer science community, I'm not so sure if people like play around with notebooks and kind of try to make models of whatever they're interested in and see how, like what comes out. And thought experiments are devices of the imagination used to investigate the nature of things. And I mean, classical examples, Maxwell's demon, Einstein, imagining, trying, like riding this beam of light, or like Schrödinger's cat, for example. And even literature, like this dystopian novella, Brave New World. They're all thought experiments, and they are all kind of trying to make some idea, make it more tangible, and formulate it in a way that is coherent and make it accessible to others. So, and programming is especially well suited for this purpose, in my opinion. It can lay bare the dependencies of a system, and a well-written program is a program in which it is very clear how the components interact, what influences what, and what constrains what. It forces you to be very explicit about the interrelations, similar to what mathematical description does, but actually it's more. It is a dynamic description that kind of executes in time, so it has more richness to it, in my opinion. And so through creating this kind of mechanized thought experience implemented in Python, in my case, one can make the abstract tangible and make it reproducible. I mean, you can just download my IPython Notebook later and run it, and then you have it reproduced. And you can change things and play around. So, the practical example. I mean, I've pretty much described it already. I mean, I programmed an agent-based simulation from scratch, trying to make clear this idea of cognition as kind of survival through the processing of information. And at the time, it was, of course, a great excuse to spend more time programming, because I had just kind of started learning Python on my own, and I got really interested in it. But I mean, for this thesis, I spent like months just programming, and it was a really cool project. And that was quite some time ago. So, but in this context, I chose, cognition because I think it is used too ambivalently in psychology and neuroscience. Like there was at the time was this whole discussion about like cognitive enhancement and how it is like maybe morally bad or good, and I kind of thought, so what is cognition really? If cognition, like to me, it was obvious that more cognition is necessarily good because I don't know, it was just an obvious thing. And the more I looked into it, it seemed always less clear what cognition really is. Traditionally, people think of it like as high brain functions, hierarchical thinking, and abstract reasoning. And the thing is, it's really like the border to other things, and like where is it grounded in physiological reality? That's not so clear if you really look into it. And I mean, it's based on a massive amount of complexly interrelated processes, cognition. And if you think about it, like from the down up, like just such a simple thing as blood oxygenation is basically it's fundamental to proper cognitive function, and it's something that definitely is a factor. And from the top down, I mean, if you just like abstractly, theoretically identify a danger to your physical well-being, then also your body needs to react to it. You need to have a fear response. You need to get ready to maybe fight or like run away, and that is all part of cognition. And yeah, I just said that. So this definition of Maturana Varela, they're actually, I think they're both biologists, and they did a lot of neuroscience research as well, and it was 1980 that they came up with this theory of autopoietic machines. It sounds really like special, but really it's kind of like looking at life as a loop that is feeding itself, keeping itself alive, and processing information in order to do so. Yeah. And it is at a simple level of just a simple cell, and it's also at the level of something as complex as a human being, or even a civilization or whatever. It's not done yet. Now I'm going to use the chance to give you a look at my simulation. Was not designed to be like especially graphically pleasing, so it's basically like a grid with Unicode, and it's a bit like nostalgic. It reminds one of the ASCII thingies. Wait, let me restart it. So the agents have all kinds of properties, and they have kind of simple cognition. They have their own representation of the world. They kind of it's based on a classical agent-based model called Sugarscape, where the agents kind of run around a grid and collect sugar, and they need to do so because they have a metabolism and they burn the sugar, and they need that in order to survive. And that's like the simple model behind that, and basically then I kind of every agent is its own instance, and it has its own representation of the world, and it has like slightly diverging properties. And then you can see like over time how well the different agents survive with like different combinations of properties, and they can even have offspring and like recombine. And so over time you can kind of see how a kind of evolution happens. And like the whole thesis was about how different obvious like factors, like not obvious, but different factors that seem pretty simple can have like a pretty clear effect on something as simple and stupid seeming as this really, really simple agent-based model, which is not so simple after all. The problem is that they're dying too fast. So the thing is that the less health they have, the more faint they become, and you kind of see them swarming around, and basically this is kind of like the forest has a lot of sugar, and you have seasons, and basically the blue part is in winter, and the green part is in spring and summer, and the growth of the sugar, the regrowth is based on that. And if the agents eat too much sugar at a certain place, it will not regrow for a fixed period. And there's all these kind of aspects to it. I mean, if you want to play around with it, feel free to download the notebook. I don't know how much time we have left. What? Plenty. So, well, the whole thing is built on a grid, and every cell in the grid is a tile, and the tile has certain properties, like how much sugar it has, you know, and it regrows the sugar, and it interacts with the agents. So the agents can eat up the sugar, and here you see a graph, for example, of the depletion of a sugar cell. If the agents eat up all the sugar, it will be like a fixed period until it regrows again. So you can also kind of see the impact of, you know, if I would like just have like 1,000 agents at the same time, they would just eat up all the sugar, and like 70% of the population would die, and some would be able to survive. So it shows like how an environment can sustain a certain population and how it's kind of self-regulating, and there's a lot of interesting dynamic to it. And like you can see, I used actually it turns out that like there's a huge state space in this whole thing. Like even with such a small grid and Python, at a certain point it was just too slow to properly run it, and so I had to kind of profile the functions and optimize some of the functions that were most used, and I also used Cythonize, here you have the agent model, and every agent has like a fixed metabolism and kind of a heartbeat, and the thing is that like I had different versions of this. Basically, in one version, the agents, as they would be aging, the metabolism would get, you know, more intense, and then at a certain point they would just die from age because they couldn't upkeep their metabolism anymore. And there's all kinds of different parameters that are interesting to play with, and that kind of come back at this kind of model of cognition, and how you can kind of verify it in the abstract and make it kind of illustrated. Yeah, I think, and I displayed the whole thing with a kind of like in HTML, and it's an HTML frame that updates itself for every step of the simulation, and that's how I did the visualization. Yeah, that's about it. I guess if you have any questions, you can ask me now. And just quickly, as a last thing, thank you very much for listening. You can find this IPython Notebook and the thesis about it, which is much more in detail and really well written. Actually, I put a lot of effort into it, and like not so, and I think it's also nice to read. Is on GitHub on my account, and just a bit of self-advertisement. If you liked what you saw, or like have a nice team that does quality work in software development, I'm now not a psychologist anymore. At least not primarily. I'm a computer scientist, or aspiring to be, and I'm looking for more practical experience. I mean, I have research experience. I worked at Niels Bohr Research Institute, where I developed this, and then I worked at an AI institute where I had to work with a huge Python code base. But right now I'm looking for something more practical in nature, and want to learn more about really good software development practices. So if you know of any opportunities or feel like passing on my CV to your HR department, please come to me, and I will hand one of my many copies to you. All right.
Thanks so much. So there's a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. What you told in the beginning of the presentation was that you want to learn more about the cognition, right? So that's why you went into programming. You used an agent-based model. What did this teach you about the cognition of these agents that you invented or made up?
Well, it taught me more, like, I mean, in a way, what I notice now also while studying computer science, that is much different to kind of the thinking that's going on in this kind of psychology domain, is really this kind of proceduralness of thinking, and how one thing follows from the other, and how things are kind of like interlinked in a way that is mechanical and not just associative and kind of, and that's what I learned from the thing. I mean, it was not, in the end, it was just a really nice kind of toy for me, you know, and it was a toy where I could see, like I could deduce some things, and it was enough for a bachelor thesis, but it was not some, you know, fundamental research, you know, it's not some crazy new thing that it's groundbreaking, but it's a really nice way, in my opinion, of playing with ideas and of making things concrete. And I think, you know, if you put more effort and, you know, with the possibilities and computing power that are just coming with time, I think you can do much more interesting research. And yeah. And
Okay, so
it
as
was
a general
less,
concept for psychology, it could be interesting. That's what you're saying. Right?
No, I'm saying it's really good to combine perspectives from different fields, and it's very nice to kind of get ideas and thought patterns from different areas and combine them and create something new and play around with it. And this is also something that, like, I mean, if there's anybody that is a psychologist, maybe it was interesting, but also I think for computer science, to me, I think it is quite a unique perspective, and I just wanted to share it with you guys.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Because in that case, I might be selfish and ask one myself. Could you show your notebook again?
Yeah.
What exactly do you use to cause the simulation animation to happen? Is that a sort of magic that's in the notebook itself, or is that a certain package that you're using? And
No,
I'm talking
it's,
about the cool thing with the ASCII art and with colors and all.
Yeah, it's quite a while ago that I programmed this, but basically, I use this display frame. Wait, let me see. So basically here you see the template, and basically this template is dynamically updated with every step, and then it's displayed like it's with every step of the simulation, it's dynamically updated, and IPython Notebook just displays it that way. And basically it clears the output at the end of every step, and then it redraws it, but it's not perceptible. So it seems like a dynamic,
so it's like an updating for loop, if you will, which removes the old frame and puts a new one in place.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a trick I've never seen, which is very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
If I could have one last applause for our dear speaker.
Thank you.